So changing topics, what if we wanted to make text bold or underlined or italics? These are things that are like easily at your disposal in Microsoft Word, right? There's a little button that you can press that will take whatever's highlighted and turn it into italics. Well, we don't have those little buttons in LaTeX, so we need macros to tell it when to do things to text. So let's say I wanted the word text here to be bold. Well, there's a macro called textBF, text boldface. And so I'm surrounding it in braces to basically feed this as an argument to the macro so that when this builds, I see this is boldface. There's similar macros where I can make certain things, phrases, teletype, and then it'll be in sort of a mono text format, or underline. Text TT, text teletype. We can see this became boldface, this became teletype, and this became underlined. These are very strange stylistic things, and they should be used sparingly and with meaning. Far more common, however, is trying to make some text stand out. And there's a special macro for that, emph. Emph functionally, most times, makes something italics. But again, its goal is to define some structural element that needs special consideration. In this case, emphasis. Text I want to tweak is going to be emphasized in some way. If I open it up, the style is decided. The way that it will emphasize it is to make it italics. If I had some bold-faced font, as you would hope, because it is a boldface environment inside of an emphasized environment, it would be both bold and emphasized. If I wanted to emphasize something within the emphasized environment, like the word want. Say I wanted the word want to be emphasized while I am within this emphasized environment. It nests well. It will always change the appearance so as to make it emphasized compared to the surrounding text. So in this case, text I want to tweak is emphasized, and within that, the word want is further emphasized, so it makes it non-italics. I would argue that most of the time you want to make something italics, you actually just want to emphasize it, and you should be using emph. And it nests well. So this is especially helpful, right, in long sections of text when it's all being emphasized. You want to emphasize something within that. This is very different than pure italics. There is an italics environment, and I would argue most of the time you do not want to use italics. The reason you would want to use italics is, book titles. You want this italics because no matter what is happening in the surrounding text, you want the title to remain italicized. So even if this is emphasized, you want War and Peace to remain italics. This is very different than emphasis. If you tried to use emphasis when you meant structurally italics, then this would become unemphasized, and it would look very strange because book titles should remain italics, really no matter how the surrounding text is being typeset. So when you mean to emphasize something to differentiate it from the surrounding text, use emphasis. And when you really mean italics, like in all worlds, the following text needs to be shown in italics, like you would with book titles, used italics. Don't use one for the other. Something else that people routinely need to do is quote. And so for long block quotes, there's a special environment, begin quotation. And you see that this is indented because it's the beginning of a paragraph. This block quote is being indented because it's the beginning of the paragraph, and what is inside of it is typeset according to the styles that you've thrown into it. And this is the following, it's a continuation of the paragraph, so it's non-indented. I can make that clearer by putting a paragraph before it. See, and it gets a little breathing room on both sides by default in this style, in order to separate the block text from the rest of the text. Well, what if you have an inline quotation and you're not interested in block quotation? How do we do normal quotations? Well, you might attempt quotation marks. Those did not render correctly. They're going in strange directions. The proper way to do quotations, and you may find this annoying, is to tell it that you would like to use the beginnings of a quotation look different than the end of a quotation. And in this sense, LaTeX is just typesetting the characters you've asked it to typeset. So you need to request different characters. You need to request beginning quotation marks and ending quotation marks in order to get proper looking smart citations, quotations. So now, because I used those two characters that are found on my keyboard on the same key as where the tilde is located, two of those indicate opening smart quotations, and then a double quotation or two single quotations indicate two ending smart quotations. So let's say I had a quotation that had punctuation in it. This is getting into the nits of how white space is handled, but is pulling apart how LaTeX thinks. So we see here that the question mark or any punctuation within a quotation is picked up by LaTeX as the end of the sentence. And the amount of white space it has inserted is slightly larger than the white space it is inserting between words. This is its behavior, that by default, if it sees a piece of punctuation, like an exclamation mark or a question mark or a period, that it believes that that's the end of a sentence. And so it puts white space in that looks like the white space that's appropriate for the end of a sentence. This comes up a lot in so here, there's a little extra white space after the question mark. There's a little extra white space between Dr. and Jones. That punctuation mark is being picked up as the end of a sentence structurally, and LaTeX is putting in the correct amount of white space for what would be the end of a sentence. But if I wanted to tell it that wasn't the end, I would escape it. What I'm really escaping is the white space after it, to tell it to insert a normal amount of white space. And in this case, maybe it's clearer if I do it side by side in an itemized environment. That this is actually slightly more white space. We can see it if I take a bounding box. See that J is not pressed up against the gray box. There is more white space in the first one than in the second one. That I've correctly escaped the white space. Visually, I can recognize these things now. Maybe it seems really minor and a nit to you, but this seems far more natural, whereas this looks like it has too much white space in it. And the same with here. So I could escape the white space after the quotation to have this rendered far more naturally. Now it's inserting an amount of white space that looks approximately similar to how it was dealing with white space across the sentence. So it's perhaps hard to recognize.